So I caused a bit of a fuss the other day on Instagram because I said that vegans could eat meat, and I kind of want to explain that. So here we go. Okay, to give you a bit of background, if you haven't heard of this at all already, on my podcast, yes, I've got a podcast, I mention it all the time. On my podcast, I was talking about veganism, and I said conceivably you could have a vegan that could eat meat. Then I posted a 4-minute clip of that to Instagram. You can watch that on YouTube here. So then I did a poll on Instagram saying, could you be vegan and eat meat, and put a little question on the bottom to see what people thought. And people didn't agree with me at all. I actually think quite a few people got quite angry because obviously, on the face of it, vegans eating meat doesn't sound like it makes sense, but I'm here to explain to you why it can. Maybe. So what is veganism? We need to figure that one out first. So I've got the dictionary definition right here. First off, it's a person who does not eat or use animal products, or it's using or containing no animal products. So that is the simplest definition, someone who doesn't use animal products, which means that, no, you can't eat meat and be vegan. That was kind of the point that everybody that disagreed with me got stuck on, but there is more to it than that. Effectively, that definition is based entirely on what you eat or what products you use, and it doesn't really work, does it? For instance, if you were to accidentally eat meat, would you still be a vegan? I mean, I've accidentally had stuff that has got animal products in it before, but I would still say that I was vegan after that. I mean, conceivably, through that definition, you are not a vegan if someone feeds you something that isn't vegan. But we all kind of agree that if it's by accident, then it's fine, you can still be a vegan, it's what you choose to eat. So there's already a difference from that dictionary definition right there. So if that's what you're using, first hurdle, it's fallen down. The next question I want to ask you is, can you be vegan for a day? If you were to have a day where you only have plant-based food, would you then be vegan for that day? Because how long does veganism last? I mean, is it something you've got to do for more than a day? What is the cutoff there? Is it a week? Is it a month? Or is it just deciding to do it? With the dictionary definition, there's no timescale on that. So realistically, given that, the only person that could be vegan is someone who is vegan from birth and didn't get fed any animal products by accident. That's the only person that could be vegan under this definition. See, the definition kind of falls apart when it's so strict and it doesn't have any nuance to it. If you're only vegan when you don't use animal products, then anyone that isn't using animal products at that current moment could conceivably be called vegan. Let's say you did Veganuary. If you were vegan for a month and then you stopped being vegan and started eating meat again, were you vegan for that month at all? Because you're now using animal products again. What is the minimum timescale that you can call yourself a vegan for? If someone just by chance had a completely animal product free day without even meaning to, would you say that they were vegan? They didn't have animal products for a day, so they were vegan for a day. But then they started eating meat again because they didn't choose to stop eating meat, they just didn't have any that day. Were they vegan for that day? I don't know. That definition doesn't cover situations like that. Ultimately, all this definition covers is someone who decides to say that they're a vegan, and that's it. We all add our own nuance to that definition. So if you're saying to me that you can't be vegan and use any animal products because it doesn't fit the dictionary definition of veganism, then nothing fits the dictionary definition of veganism, so that point is moot already. What I'm saying is that the dictionary definition of veganism is so devoid of context and so narrow in its definition that not many things would fall under veganism if you were to use that definition. Questions we really need to ask ourselves now are, is veganism something that's done by choice, and is there a timescale? Because both of those things aren't covered in the dictionary definition at all. Let's say that doesn't matter to you. You've been vegan your whole life, you've never accidentally eaten meat, so you still fall into that dictionary definition of being a vegan, someone who doesn't use any animal product. Except you don't, because there are a lot of vegan products that aren't technically vegan. The first one is figs. Figs need to be pollinated by a wasp, and the wasp goes inside, and in the female fig, the wasp dies inside the fig and is effectively digested by the fig and becomes part of the fig. Now obviously, commercial figs don't necessarily have that. There's been a whole kind of look into it, and ultimately, figs don't contain wasps if you're buying them from the shops, but the fact is that figs can really contain wasps, so you can't be 100% sure on that, can you? How do you know that the fig that you've got wasn't actually pollinated by a wasp? I don't know, I would just avoid figs altogether if I were you. So if you've had a fig, you might not be vegan. The next one is honey. Well, obviously honey isn't vegan because it comes from the labour of bees. Not vegan, it's an animal product. But that's not the only thing that bees work on that we then eat. Avocados and almonds are pollinated by bees. Now, a lot of plants are pollinated by bees, but in particular almonds and avocados, they ship bees from one area of a country to another, which, in the process of it, ends up killing up to 30% of the hive. Bees have died in the production, and there's also forced bee labour to produce those fruits and vegetables. So, not really very vegan, are they? Especially considering it comes at the death of an animal and not just through its work. So if you're vegan and you've had an avocado or drank some almond milk, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not actually a vegan, are you? Now let's say that you never had avocados or almonds in your life and you've not even touched a fig, but you do quite enjoy a little bit of peanut butter. Now, the thing about peanut butter is that it actually contains quite a bit of insects. In fact, in 100 grams you can have 30 insect parts as approved by the FDA. If you're a peanut butter fan, you've probably had insect. And when I say probably, you have definitely had ground up insects in your peanut butter. But let's say that you make your own peanut butter at home. All you need to do is get some peanuts, get some palm oil, chuck that in and blend it up. So you know that there are no crushed up insects in your peanut butter, except the thing about palm oil is that in order to get it, they destroy a lot of habitats for orangutans in particular, and they die in the production of that. So if you're killing an animal in the production, it's not necessarily technically an animal product, but you are letting an animal die, which is not really in the spirit of veganism, is it? So you're probably not vegan if you have palm oil either. So let's say you've never had any of that stuff before, but when you were younger, you had a vaccine, a flu vaccine maybe. Now, the thing about vaccines is that they are and were produced using eggs. You would use an egg to make a vaccine. Pretty sure eggs aren't vegan, are they? So if you're using a vaccine, which comes from an animal product, then you're probably not vegan, are you? Yeah, you could have died of the flu, but also you used an egg, so that's the veganism gone for you, I'm afraid. And beyond that, if you look at pretty much all medicines, they're tested on animals. So, should probably avoid those. And also, you know, the capsules that have got gelatin in them. I know they've got alternatives, but sometimes you might not know about it. Your doctor won't necessarily tell you, and you end up having gelatin. Whoops, I mean, not vegan again. So let's say that you have not had any of that stuff, you've not even had a vaccine because you're an anti-vaxxer, you're into herbal medicine, so you've not even touched anything from the doctors. You are the perfect vegan. All you have in your diet is plants, and that's it. Just plants. Now, I hate to say it, but unless those plants are organic, animals died in the production of them. Pesticides are used to kill pests, animals, and if you've had those plants, then you've been complicit in the killing of animals. So not very good at being vegan there, are you? So now we know who the true vegan is. It's someone who's not been vaccinated, who doesn't use traditional medicine, who grows all of their own plants themselves organically, but specifically not the ones that involve the labor of animals. That is not someone who exists. There might be someone who does that. But if you're following dictionary definitions and really following the spirit of veganism, that is the only person who can really be vegan. So obviously not everyone that calls himself vegan does that or follows those rules, because they're not accessible. Which brings me on to my next point, veganism and accessibility. So there's generally this kind of image of a vegan, which is someone who's quite well off, very middle class, and quite privileged. And there is a reason for that, because veganism can be really inaccessible. If you don't have much money, it can be difficult to switch to a vegan diet. If you're on the poverty line and you're using food banks, there aren't going to be many vegan options. And even if there are, you're not going to be able to actually nourish yourself with the food that they give you, given that people aren't giving it, considering the fact that people will be vegan. I can only find 2 vegan food banks in the UK. 2. That's not enough to nourish every single vegan person who is on the poverty line, which obviously forces poor people out of veganism. Which means that if you want to call yourself vegan, you need to have the money and the resources in order to be fully vegan. Doesn't really seem fair. It doesn't seem to make sense when it's a movement that wants more people to join it. You don't want to exclude people, you want to include as many people as you want in that definition so that they can do as much as they can. Even if you're not on the poverty line, let's say that you can comfortably afford food, enough to feed yourself and your family. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've got the time or the education to make yourself and your entire family vegan. If you're working 2 jobs and you have 2 kids, how are you going to find the time to properly research vegan nutrition so that you know that you're feeding yourselves what you should be eating? Ultimately, being vegan and healthy involves quite a bit of research into what nutrients you're missing and which ones that you really need and how to get those. So if you don't have that time and you don't have the ability to research that, then you probably won't be able to be vegan. And you certainly won't be able to be healthy and be vegan. Again, it's just pushing people who don't have those resources out of veganism, which doesn't make sense. And obviously making vegan food cheaper and easier to come by is gonna help, but that's not going to solve the entire problem. And sometimes finding vegan food can be hard. You need to go to particular places to find the particular substitutes. And even if you can afford them, just having the time to do that is something that isn't afforded to everyone. So that already means that veganism isn't very accessible for someone who is less well off, who doesn't have quite the amount of time or money that other people could have in order to be vegan. On top of that, there's the nutrition of it. The average person can live a perfectly healthy life being vegan, but not everyone is the average person. Some people have severe allergies. Some people just would not be able to get the proper nutrition on a vegan diet without a lot of time and effort. Sometimes it's probably healthier for someone to not be vegan rather than fight the uphill battle of staying alive on a vegan diet. Now, that's not the case for everyone, obviously. I'm not saying that veganism is a diet that makes people malnourished. I'm just saying that some people can't really survive easily on a vegan diet. And if someone is already having those difficulties, why make it harder for them? Now, I wouldn't say that veganism is a restrictive diet or a lifestyle in and of itself. I would say that the current infrastructure that we have forces restrictions upon it. And even if you can conceive of a world where everyone can comfortably be vegan, where poverty has been stamped out, where there are enough substitutes for people who have severe allergies or deficiencies to be vegan, that doesn't mean that that's the world we're living in now. If being vegan is going to be this case of moral superiority, where it's a better lifestyle or a less cruel lifestyle, if people are going to be vegan and act the way they do about veganism, then you should be damn sure that veganism is accessible to everyone, that anyone can choose to be a vegan. If not everyone can be vegan, but being vegan is the better lifestyle, then you're saying that people that can't are worse because of that. So what else can veganism be? I've really mostly spoken about it being a diet because that's probably the main part of it, but ultimately it could be a mindset, a philosophy, or a lifestyle. The philosophy being reducing harm to animals, or harm to the planet, or just overall reducing harm. And if that's the philosophy, it alters the definition slightly. If it's a mindset that animals and animal products shouldn't be seen as commodities, shouldn't be seen as food, shouldn't be seen as something that we can enjoy eating just for the sake of it, then that completely changes the definition as well. There's also the lifestyle where in every area of your life you remove harm to animals. Now, all of these things can't be done as an absolute, just based on the world that we live in. There is no real conceivable way to live in a modern society and not at least partly contribute to the subjugation of animals. There is no real way, just in the same way that there's no way to live in this modern society and not contribute to climate change. There is no way for one single person to completely avoid harming animals or harming the planet when they're living in a normal society. You can run off to the woods and live a completely carbon neutral life and be completely vegan and live off the earth. That is totally fine, but that is not something that everyone can do. So unless you're living completely off the grid, then you're contributing to those problems. You can't, in the strictest sense, call yourself a vegan. But people still call themselves vegan, despite not falling in line with the strictest of strict definitions of veganism. Why is that? So what do I think veganism is? I think that it's a mindset or a lifestyle that involves completely minimizing the harm done to animals and the planet. Why the planet? Because we all live on the planet. So do the animals. If you are destroying the planet, you're destroying the lives of animals. So to be vegan is to be environmentally conscious, obviously. And specifically abstaining as much as possible from the intake or use of animal products. Obviously, there are some cases where you have to have a vaccine. That's fine. You can use medicine that's tested on animals. We live in a world where it's almost impossible to avoid these things. So avoid it in every single area that you can, and if it's impacting your actual survival, your health, then that's fine. You don't need to kill yourself over veganism. That's not productive. And I know what you might be thinking, that's just reductionism, but it's not. I'm not talking about just reducing harm or reducing intake or use of animal products. I'm talking about minimizing it, getting it down to the absolute minimum point you can without it negatively affecting your mental or physical health. Getting it to a point where you've gotten rid of all of the animal products that you can conceivably get rid of in your life. That's what veganism should be. And obviously that level is different for every single person because every single person lives under different circumstances. One person, for instance, could have a severe calcium deficiency and have to drink dairy to comfortably stay alive. I had someone message me about that. Obviously there are other alternatives, but if you can't afford those, or it doesn't necessarily fit into your lifestyle without really impacting your mental or physical health, then having a bit of milk every now and again is fine. The key part here is that you have to be doing as much as you can. And this isn't just a nonchalant flexitarianism. No, this is doing as much as you can, but it's allowing for people that can't do as much as others. What that means is that literally anyone can be vegan. It doesn't need to be this strict club that only a few people can get into. Anyone can be vegan. Anyone can have that impact if they want and if they try. If you have to have medicine and there's no other vegan option, then you can have that. If your health is going to be impacted severely if you don't use animal products, then you can do that. If you're on the poverty line and you're being fed animal products because you've got no other option, then yeah, that's fine, because you're still doing as much as you can. This isn't going to dilute the concept of veganism. It doesn't mean that someone who eats meat, drinks milk, and eats eggs, but doesn't wear leather can call themselves vegan. No, it just means that literally anyone can be it, and it's not going to exclude people. It's not going to deter people from veganism because they don't feel like they can do it. It means that someone that wants to do as much as they can do that and comfortably call themselves vegan, which will lead to more people adopting that lifestyle because it's not so drastic. There's already a spectrum of veganism, from people who don't have palm oil or paper down to monks who will eat meat if it's given to them because they don't want to contribute to food wastage. I'm not talking about changing the definition altogether. Every single individual's definition of veganism creates a spectrum already. I'm just talking about allowing it to be more accessible and letting more people into that club. Because ultimately, what veganism is right now is a way to say, I'm better than you because I can do this, which is pointless. It doesn't seem to be in the spirit of it. If you're only vegan just so that you can say you're vegan and you know other people aren't, then why? What is the point of doing that if you don't care? And I honestly think people that care and are making that change deserve to have that little badge of veganism if they want to. Because ultimately, yes, people think being vegan makes you better than other people. It doesn't, but people still think that. So when I say that vegans can eat meat, I'm not saying that someone who calls himself a vegan can decide to have a beef burger and then walk away still calling themselves a vegan. No. What I'm saying is that people who have the complete philosophical mindset of a vegan, who hold all of the values and ideals of veganism, but aren't able to cut out every single animal product from their life due to their financial situation or health reasons, they should still be allowed to call themselves vegan, because fundamentally they are, apart from this small thing of not physically being able to live without something. And being excluded because of your health or class is not fair at all. So given that, yes, you can conceive of a situation where someone is allergic to, say, soy and most other high-protein vegan foods. So in order to stay alive and be properly nourished, they need to have a bit of meat every now and again. And all I'm saying is that that person should still be able to be called vegan. They don't want to eat meat. They're only eating it because they have to stay alive. In the same way that if someone was dropped on a desert island and they couldn't conceivably survive off of all the plants there, and they started hunting and eating animals, sure, they could come back and still be vegan. If you've got a real problem with this, I just want to ask you why. I'm not saying this just to say vegans can eat meat, it doesn't matter. I'm saying it to make you think about why you're vegan and what veganism actually is. Because if you're just vegan because you want to say that you cut out all animal products from your diet and lifestyle, then it seems like a really pointless thing to do. But if you're vegan because you want to minimize your contributions to harming the planet and animals, then I don't see any reason why you would disagree with this just because someone else has a different minimum level from you. But that's what I think veganism is. What do you think it is? Let me know what you think of this in the comments, and also check out my podcast, because that's what started this whole ball rolling in the first place. Anyway, I will see you at some point in the future. Goodbye.